Now this is something I share with you. When I began this lifestyle more than 40 years ago, I was quite obese. As a matter of fact, when I take my shirt off, when I pose for Playgirl magazine, basically what I see is stretch marks on my back. Little did I know back then, I could have been putting an ointment on my body that would have either greatly reduced or eliminated these stretch marks. I'm going to give you an unlikely way to achieve this. In your country and throughout Europe and the rest of the world, Mothering magazine can be purchased. Mothering magazine, a great periodical on a subject that is very important, babies. And in that form of magazine, a natural birthing magazine, they're going to have a variety of ointments available for you to buy that help to prevent moms from having stretch mark after pregnancy. Out of all the things that I've had people attempt to use over the decades, nothing has been more effective than this. And rather than give you the name of one product and have you go on a rampage trying to find it and pull your hair out, I'm just going to say go to those sources of natural birthing magazines in the United States and in Europe. You can purchase Mothering, and I'm sure online you can find Mothering magazine now. You'll find a variety of those ointments and try them out. You're going to see a great difference. Of course, lifting weight will be a good part of that. Aerobic exercise will be part of that. But they alone will not assure the removal or at least great reduction of those stretch marks. Somebody wisely asks if you can become too alkaline from eating a particular way. And the answer is yes. Where I find that to be most notorious is with those who consume large fruit diets. Because fruit inherently, with its high fluidity, has a greater propensity to be alkaline. And so if one consumes large amounts of fruit that is ripe, they become alkaline. On the other hand, if you consume the average fruit, even organic ones, biofoods, that have been picked on, ripened, which almost everyone is, you can become highly acid. And that's where we have major problems, and from all of the cells, including the bones, throughout the body, you have nutrients robbed from the high acidity unripened fruits. Don't worry about being too alkaline if you eat the Hippocrates diet, because the foods that we are suggesting and have for over 55 years have a perfect balance between 80% and 20% acidity. You don't have to be a brain scientist or a biochemist to figure this out. Just follow the books like Life Force and Living Food for Optimum Health, or better yet, get on planes, boats, trains, and walk here. You can even hike up the major hills of Florida and come to Hippocrates, where we can help to transform your whole way of thinking and living. Somebody asks about leaky gut. This is an ever-increasing problem, and I really think it's a catch basin term, that when physicians, be it natural or mainstream, discover that a person has indigestion and digestive disorders, they often categorize it as the gut is leaking. Now, there are some classic cases of that, but in all situations, food alone or juices alone will not remedy it. You must also take supplementation, and proper forms of vegan form probiotics are at the top of the list. Now, there's many probiotics out there. You have to get one that is full spectrum, that is manifesting the exact type of healthy bacteria that the human intestines would contain to begin with. Next, you have to be looking at the use prudently and wisely, hopefully under the care of a knowledgeable physician, of taking edible green clay to create a bacterial culture so that the bacteria that you're now ingesting can grow on top of that and organically help to reverse this condition. Now, each case is a little individual, and when people are here at Hippocrates, what we're literally doing is our medical team is looking at them and tailoring programs to their specific need, and defining which people really truly have their guts leaking and which people were diagnosed with that and they may have some other malady or disorder in the intestinal corridor. A really interesting question came in on telomeres. Many of you out there think telomeres are spacecraft coming from a faraway universe, but they really are little tails on the bottom of your chromosomes. They're really cute if you look at them. If you tickle them, they sort of giggle and move around. But what we've learned only in recent years is that telomeres can determine whether or not you're going to live a long, healthy life or not. And when they were testing people who were up in years, 90 and 100, they find that their telomeres did not break down or unravel like others. Now, the best way for me to describe this to you out there is a telomere is like a cloth lace that you may find on a sports sneaker. As you notice, at the end of that lace that's cloth and weaved together, there's a little round plastic plug that holds that little lace together. Picture that as a telomere. As we don't eat properly, as we do not sleep adequately, as we have pollutions from air and sea and water and everywhere your clothing come into you, that telomere shortens and shortens and shortens to such a point where it no longer holds that lace or the telomere together, and it unravels, weakening your chromosome or DNA. Now, what we do know is if you eat less food in high-quality, dense nutrition, those telomeres stand strong. They don't unravel. What we do know is that if a person exercises, it seems proper, sensible exercise has that hold together. What we do know is people with less stress maintain their telomeres. So the three things we can tell you that scientifically can be supported today is less stress, proper but not too much exercise aerobically and weightlifting, and lastly, high quality, nutrition-dense food like Hippocrates has been teaching for half a century in smaller and smaller amounts. It doesn't mean the anorexics out there should be listening to me and thinking he's saying not to eat. I'm saying not overeating. And this way we can promise you'll live a longer life. As a matter of fact, since 1930, there's not been a study done on life extension that hasn't proven one thing. People who eat less of high quality food live longer and have less disease. One of the great misinformation campaigns I've seen in supplement industry is on colostrum. 20 years ago, against my own better judgment, because I keep an open mind, I did a little research on immunological strengthening from colostrum, which by the way is extracted from a cow, and found that there was no benefit on the differentials, that we did not see one of the immune system cells increase. Now, if colostrum could come from a mother, not to say I'm promoting this, it would certainly help the antibodies and the immune system strengthen and be stable. But taking it from a cow, which has no relation to you, unless you're the typical person who overeats constantly, you basically will get little to no benefit from it. You may get something that you don't want though, because the casein that's in it has been clearly and directly linked to cancer tumor growth. So be cautious. When you go into research and you're promoting and selling a product, you're always going to tell the benefit of the product rather than the full spectrum of research that's been exposed about that type of food, quote, food consumption. Dairy is not meant from a cow to be in a human body. I know there's a lot of people out there today, because of their own emotional instability, that still promote the slaughtering of animals and the drinking of milk from their bodies. Someday they may grow to a point where they're secure enough to embrace a human diet that we have shown here with hundreds and hundreds of thousands for 55 years work in every case. So it's really about emotional stability when we come to whether or not we should slaughter animals and drink their milk, or if you need them. So-called raw milk and raw meat are really not raw and living. If you took an EKG machine, which we in hospitals use to determine whether or not somebody's alive, and how it determines it is to see if there's electromagnetic frequency that's coming from that body, and stuck it on an uncooked piece of steak or an uncooked piece of fish, you would see it flatlined. There'd be no electromagnetic frequency at all coming from that decomposing flesh. In those particular cases, you're going to see that they are really not living and raw, but they are decomposing, riddled with bacteria, most likely parasites, and if you're really unlucky, amoeba. It also has saturated fat, which the body doesn't need, and on top of that whole thing, it creates massive acidity that kill healthy cells, promoting and supporting free radical damage, the cause of all premature aging and disease. Now let's step over to to milk consumption. Another really swift idea for those emotionally insecure. If you were willing to get down on your knees next to a heifer, a cow, that, by the way, probably would be having fecal matter come out of it at the time, you could drink from the breast of the cow. If somehow you think you're a calf and think that this is a healthy thing for human beings to do, but if you have just a vague amount of common sense, which isn't so common, remember that. Common sense isn't available anymore, it seems. You'd understand that that really isn't a natural process for you. And by the way, the milk from a cow that's taking a little tiny calf that's dozens of pounds and making a 1,000-pound creature does a pretty good job with that. A good friend of mine, basically a few years ago, successfully here in the United States, sued the dairy industry when they had advertisement on national television that said, if you drink milk, you'll lose weight. What a joke that was. When I gave up dairy foods, I deflated so fast I was like a balloon that had been popped. Let me assure you that dairy foods are a culprit along with decomposing flesh. We flourish on a green diet that is very well balanced. Not one that eats just fruits and vegetables that were picked months or weeks before and shipped to your location. You have to be growing these foods, which are so easy and so simple. Families of 4 and 5 can grow these foods, sprouts, in a matter of minutes every week. And these are the things that we have scientifically validated through clinical research on human beings here, with hundreds of thousands of people, to be health-building foods. Anyone that would like to challenge that, I invite you, because Hippocrates is the place where people come after everything else has failed in many cases. And what we've seen in thousands and thousands and thousands of cases is this diet was the key to open the door to their well-being and regaining of health. Toxoplasmosis, which is a widespread name, parasitic problem today, is something that one has to be cautious of. And it is found in many ways, not just in your food. This can be contamination from a person or intimate contact with a person. If a person's body or immune system is weak enough, you could literally pick it up from door handles or sitting on a bathroom toilet seat. Now, what we have to always do is consider parasites as an ongoing concern throughout our life. When I had a practice in New York City 20 years ago, my partner, a medical doctor, and I would actually look at everyone's blood for parasites. We were finding almost unanimously parasites in people that resided in that large city. It was a rarity that we found somebody who did not contain a parasite. So when you're in close proximity with other people, we should be concerned. When you have pets, as I do at home, you should be concerned. When you have intimacy with people, you should be concerned. But we cannot be crazy about this either. I think purging yourself periodically with an herbal, effective form of parasitic cleanse may be helpful, and being tested fecally occasionally. Other testing really may not give you the kind of definitive results that fecal testing from the proper laboratories may do globally. So get that fecal test periodically. Avoid the obvious contacts and contamination sites, and don't worry about this. If people worry about germs and about parasites, well, all of us would go insane, because this whole planet is riddled with it. Somebody wrote about cavities. Now, cavities are something that come from bacteria eating up the tooth. You've got to remember that when you consume high amounts of sugar, be it in white sugar, honey, agave syrup, or mangoes, or the juice of oranges, you're going to feed those bacteria. And one thing we all have to know, no matter what we're eating, is that flossing and using proper oral health care is essential. Water picks are much better than brushes. 10 years ago, a product was placed on the market that definitively killed bacteria and spirochete that riddle the human mouth. And what you have to know is that this is something that can easily be done if you just buy perio paste or perio liquid and stick it inside of your water pick. Also understand that if you have already a cavity that's so large, and much, if not all of your tooth has to be drilled, and they propose a root canal, we're not in favor of root canals. There have been many studies, if you look these up on the internet, that will show you root canals can directly lead to other maladies in and throughout the body, but still do bacterias. Harvard study a number of years ago showed the carotid artery wasn't clogged because of all the beef and dairy you were eating, but was actually clogged because of bad oral health. And so we have to make sure that we protect ourselves, and I would much rather see a tooth pulled that was that bad and a bridge placed in there, which is less impactful on your health.